Thank you for listening to the Tattness Podcast on the Tattness Co network.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. A Mercedes kind of sentiment, luxury and trust in me to honor the free we all should be. It sees my sundial burst into yin and yang, right and left me.
Welcome to the Tattness Podcast. This is part 2 of the Raw and Order sit down that I've had and got to talk to these guys about the Elimination Chamber. This one runs a bit long, man. Longer than usual, but hey, with everything going on, everyone's stuck at home anyway. Maybe that's not a bad thing. Alright, let's get into it.
Now, how do you think Hunter must feel? Do you think he's agitated by Vince burying every NXT guy that comes up?
Yeah, at the same point, I think it's really just made H be a lot more cognizant of trying to keep people in NXT. You know, he knows that what he has on the NXT side is good, and when they go up to the main roster, they tend to get buried. So let's make it as good as we can now. And, you know, I'm not going to say H knows 100% that he's going to be taking over the company when Vince finally does stop, whether that's death or retirement will be to be determined. But but I know he knows that he's going to be at least a major part of it. So It's kind of just bide my time, try to do as good as I can with NXT, bide my time, don't make too many waves, try to protect my people as best as we can, and then things will get better eventually.
Right, and, you know, it's really funny. I feel like as the product starts to, gradually get a little better, I feel like it is all signs pointing to Vince's involvement with XFL than it is with the product.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely, yes.
That's absolutely.
The simple fact is, since in the last month or so that Vince has been busy with the XFL, Raw has become watchable for the most part, and actually probably the better of the two main roster shows.
Yeah, last week I was impressed.
Mm-hmm. It's had some great moments. You know, it had the Randy Orton turn on Edge that was absolutely riveting.
It's brilliant.
We, on our podcast, talked about it, how it was probably the best final scenes in a WWE show in forever, right? And then you had just this last week, the whole scene with Drew McIntyre claymoring Brock 47 times.
It was exhausting, he said afterward.
Yeah, I'm sure it was. I mean, because Brock's not exactly a short guy, so when you do that claymore, you got to get some air in underneath you. And,
right, exactly.
And doing it on the stage, too, where not as much give as the ring. Not that the ring has a ton of give, but it's got some.
Well, it's not on the edge where the hardest part of it.
Oh, the edge is the hardest part of the ring?
Yeah, the apron. Yeah.
Apron? Wow.
Hardest part of the ring. In case Michael Cole hasn't told you that. Every time still photo of the Claymore, I think of the cartoon character slipping on the banana. Like, don't for that, man. Just let it be a video because it's awesome when it's a video. But when you do a still, he looks like he's just kind of
I'm gonna say the unpopular thing here because I'm a dude that really believes in the interest of fairness. And I know some people are going to get fucking heated over this, but as much as people say Lesnar doesn't give a shit about anything but the money, doesn't give a shit about the business, I caught something on Raw when he got Claymored for like the fucking 7 bajillionth time. You could actually, if you pay attention, you could see him tell McIntyre to pick up the championship.
Yep.
Because it's fucking cool. Yeah, that's money in itself. It gets people hyped. Because that's what they want to see.
The thing with Lesnar is when he cares about a feud, he's all in on it.
Yeah, you get his best.
It's just he's very quick to flip to not caring about a feud. And
ask Moxley.
I was going to point out Moxley. Moxley's a perfect example. You know, Lesnar had nothing in that. He had no fucks to give about that feud. And so he phoned that in.
I love the build-up. I was expecting something great, and what I got was just meh. You know?
And I think, you know, what we've seen from Moxley since shows whose side that failure was on.
Right, and what could have been, really.
Mm-hmm.
In his feud with Braun, you saw him trying to put over Braun. Same way.
Yeah.
And they threw legit punches at each other, and afterward, in the back, they were like, "Hey, yeah, oh shit,"
Yeah.
you know,
like my bad, you know.
Yeah.
I remember that the accidental knee to the head. So Lesnar wailed him and told him, "Fucking calm down." You know, a little bit overzealous maybe, but you know, the guy's still a bit newer, and he got a little excited.
But 40, he knows he doesn't have a lot of time left. The diverticulitis will catch up with him again, and I think that stems from him being now a 12-year veteran. He really does start to have a veteran mentality when it's something he cares about, and that's no
Absolutely.
That's no different than Daniel Bryan having something he cares about. Daniel Bryan doesn't care about putting over Roman. He cares about the industry.
Absolutely.
It's no different than any of those guys. Probably the most selfish of the guys that have put people over, and this is what will get you. I would say CM Punk. CM Punk said he wanted to put other people over, but he didn't do it other than putting himself over, you know.
Yeah, I agree.
Go ahead and write me up, but
no, and that's the deal. I mean, Brock Lesnar, when Brock decides to sell, he sells with the best of them. And this last week on Raw is a perfect example. Like, if he didn't want to sell those Claymores, they would have looked like crap.
Right.
The fact that he sold them like he just got hit by a Mack truck, shows that he cares about this feud. He wasn't just phoning it in. And then, like you said, if you look closely at that after that final Claymore, when Drew's standing there at the top of the ramp, you can see, and I think someone has a video out there where they edited up the volume a bit, and you can hear him say, "Pick up the belt."
Yeah,
because
brilliant.
he knows that's the picture to end that segment on, is Drew standing there holding the belt up over Brock's lifeless body.
I had the most respect for him when I caught that, and I was like, that's brilliant. Because then I know I'm going to get a good match out of him.
Yeah. We've said it before on our podcast. Brock Lesnar, in and of himself, is not bad for the business.
No.
When Brock is in it and throwing people around, there is almost nothing as entertaining as watching Brock Lesnar throw people around, right?
Absolutely.
The part that's bad for the business is when Brock Lesnar is champion but not there.
Right.
Which I'll give him a ton of credit. This year so far, I don't know if he's 100%. I think there was one Raw that he didn't show up, but he was at least mentioned. But every other Raw, he's been there.
Exactly.
And that's fine. When he's there as champion, making appearances, he doesn't have to wrestle every month.
No.
Right? Making an appearance and being a present champion, and then coming out and occasionally throwing someone around like a ragdoll, there's almost nothing as entertaining as that.
And you see, that is exactly what I agree with. Is, to me, the only issue was him not being present for like months on end. Because I got to a point where I felt the championship didn't mean shit anymore, because it's changing hands on Raw. It's fucking like defended on every pay-per-view. It's not a big deal anymore. And then you got yourself in this pigeonhole where at WrestleMania for so many years, nobody cared about the championship match. They were there for Taker's streak. Now that that's off the table, that's not an attraction anymore. It's over. Now you have to make people care about the championship again. So you have to make it kind of a special attraction. Not just like it's defended on Raw, on the fucking weekend shows, every pay-per-view, and it changes hands 17 times a year. You want people to be like, oh shit, this is the big one. You know what I mean? And it was lacking that, in my point of view, for a long time, I think.
Yeah, and so, I mean, having Brock there on the regular, showing that belt and all that stuff, I think that's good for business. And I think the ratings for Raw have shown that.
100%, yeah.
And I enjoy it, right? And that's part of why, Raw has been enjoyable, is because Brock gets to come out, throw some people around, show off the belt, and then leave, and they've got other things that they can do. It's just those times when he was the champion and you wouldn't see him for a month and a half, and then they'd parade him out for a pay-per-view. He'd show up the week before the pay-per-view to make the final go-home announcement, I'm going to beat this person. And then he'd fuck off back to Minnesota and show up for the pay-per-view.
Or out here in Canada, because he lives here now.
Oh, does he live there now?
Yeah, Saskatchewan. Because it's like, good hunting, and it's like middle of fucking nowhere, which he likes.
Well, he'd like Nebraska too, then. We originated the middle of nowhere.
Nebraska, it's the same place.
Is that where you guys are at now?
Yeah, we're both located in Nebraska, center of the United States, America's butthole. No. That sounds worse than it is. It's not that bad of a place.
East where the butthole, is that what you're saying?
We're more like America's belly button.
Okay, well,
yeah, because the obesity epidemic.
Oh shit!
The town that D.A. Fabe and I met, we worked at a place together, and that's where we met. Is Kearney, Nebraska, and it's got a spot just west of town called the 1733 Ranch. And it's named that because it's on Highway 30, which was the first, you've heard of Route 66, but Highway 30 in America was actually the first highway that ran from coast to coast.
Oh, beautiful.
And that ranch was 1,733 miles from Boston and 1,733 miles from San Francisco.
Damn.
So basically smack dab in the middle of the country.
Holy shit.
Yeah. And it's definitely flyover country because you drive through Nebraska and there's fuck all to see.
You can look down
what was that?
You can look down the cornrows if they're planted the right way.
Oh, yeah, that's always fun to see straight down the corn rows for about, 35 seconds.
Holy shit.
Yeah. But now that we're done with the fucking history moment in central Nebraska, let's get back to fucking WWE.
Well, here's something interesting for you, because I don't know how much you guys know about me, but I'm fucking 6'5", 265 MMA fighter, and I trained in Battle Arts Academy, which is owned by Anthony Corelli, Santino Marella.
Very cool.
Yeah, it's owned and operated by him, and very cool guy.
He's always seemed like a really cool guy.
Yeah, he's brilliant.
When you get pigeonholed in WWE into a comedy character and you can still make it work, that's a big thing.
Yeah, and he was very grateful for it too, and he appreciated it. He owned it,
100% owns it. And just speaking of comedy characters, you mentioned Cornette earlier. D.A. Fabe and I go off on a regular about Cornette. And so he ultimately, here's the thing. Cornette, when he was involved in wrestling, when he was a manager out there, he gave a ton to the wrestling world, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
But the problem is he's kind of turned into the wrestling equivalent of the old man yelling at kids on their lawn.
Yeah, stay off their damn lawn.
Get off my lawn.
I love that you said that.
In a recent podcast of his, he talking about Orange Cassidy. I know you don't really follow AEW, but are you familiar with Orange Cassidy as a character?
I literally just commented on a post on social media where it was one of his matches and he was doing all that fucking gimmicky shit, and I commented, somewhere right now Jim Cornette's having an aneurysm.
Yeah. He commented in one of his podcasts, one of his most recent ones, that he hoped that Orange Cassidy caught his foot when doing a dive, caught his foot on the ropes, and fell down and broke his neck.
That's a little too far.
And I mean, the simple fact is, yeah, I get it. You're trying to be edgy and all that stuff. But when you're talking about a sport where people get really seriously injured, permanently injured, like draws, right, on a regular basis, wishing that sort of harm on anyone is not cool. Period.
Exactly. When you've been in the business, when these things have happened and you've seen the worst things happen, come on, man.
But at the same point, I want to point out the irony of a guy whose whole character was based on, I'm a rich guy and I carry a tennis racket, complaining about a guy whose whole character is he wants to put forth the littlest effort that he has to win a match. Right. There's a big amount of irony in that. Cornette lived through the time when you had characters like the Repo Man, whose character was, he's the sneaky guy who comes in and takes your car away.
Fucking terrible.
He lived and worked at WWE when Undertaker was first made, a fucking zombie. Right. And he's talking about Orange Cassidy, like Orange Cassidy is ruining the business, right? There have been wacky characters since the dawn of fucking man in wrestling.
Got two words, man. Bastion Booger.
Yeah. How about Gobbledooker? Don't want to talk WWF? You want to bring up WCW? Okay. We've got the Yeti.
Oh, my fuck. That was the worst.
Let's try this. A Samoan guy that's big, so you're going to make him suddenly sumo wrestler? I mean, that's even closer to legit, but it's still, he's not Japanese. Like,
I know, he passes for it, but I mean...
Yeah. I mean, there's so many things in it. Glacier, a character whose entire gimmick is based off of ripping off
Mortal Kombat
video game, right? WWE and WWF, wrestling as a whole, has always been based around taking these characters, whether we're talking a career in the, like, Repo Man or fucking dentist, Isaac Yankum DDS, and turning it into a character. Comedy has been a part of wrestling since the beginning. There's no difference between Orange Cassidy doing this gimmick where, and I said this before Revolution, I'll say it again, the guy can actually fucking wrestle, right? His whole character is he wants to put the minimal effort to wrestling. But if he has to turn on the jets, he turns on the jets. And at AEW Revolution, he turned on the jets and showed people what he can do. That's no different than the rich guy who hits people with a tennis racket.
I love just listening to Cornette go fucking nuts. I could envision the vein in his forehead and just.
But
the other aspect to that, if we think about it, so there's been a job that each one of us have had in our lives that we thought to ourselves, you know what? I fucking hate this job, or I love this job, but I'm not gonna do more than I have to. Like,
hey, I'm gonna break in real quick, DFA. You seem like you're like really far away from your mic right now.
Better.
Little
better. Let me change my.
There you go.
There we go. All right.
Okay, go ahead.
We've all had a job that we thought, I'm going to do the bare minimum to get by here because whatever reason there was, I'm pissed off about this or I'm pissed off about that or whatever it is. We've all had that position. So why not have a character that is that you can identify with? Like we've even had conversations where you're just like, I'm going to fucking get through this conversation and then I'm going to fucking go do what I want to do. Like meeting the in-laws or some shit like that. Where you're just like, I'm gonna do the bare fucking minimum to get through this so that I can get laid tonight, or whatever it may be. Like,
I did that a lot of times at a previous job.
I'm well aware.
But that's really the thing. I get it. The Cult of Cornette fans, which I also think is really funny because they literally call themselves cocks. They love the fact that he goes on these rampages and all this stuff. But seriously, man, calm the fuck down. We're talking about professional wrestling. We're talking about a sport, and I'm using air quotes on it, that's based off of suspending disbelief and pretending like these people are legitimate warriors, right? We're talking about Ultimate Warrior, whose whole gimmick was, I wear face paint and I yell a lot. This whole thing, don't take yourself so fucking serious, right? If you want a real sport feel, watch MMA, right?
Exactly.
The longest reigning IC title holder in history is an Elvis impersonator.
Yes.
It's so true.
Who claims that Elvis is actually a Honky Tonk Man impersonator?
Wow.
How perfect is all of that?
Yeah. It's fucking ludicrous, right? And he goes off on, mixed gender matches. They break the realism of it. You're an MMA fighter, right?
Absolutely.
You're a big, strong man. If Ronda Rousey were to challenge you to a fight, do you think she could hold her own against you?
Oh, fuck, man. I mean, that's the beauty of it all. It's like everybody busts their ass and trains hard. You know what I mean?
I think, I'm not necessarily saying one way or another who would win, but I'm saying that it's not a foregone conclusion. When you talk about someone at the top of her game, Ronda Rousey, versus any other MMA fighter, this is not something that it's an any given Sunday sort of situation.
Exactly. That's exactly what I mean, right? Everyone trains hard.
I'm going to use a different fighter for Tattness here because Rousey's a grappler, and so at 6'5", 265 pounds, that does play in his favor. So I'm going to use a different female fighter, and I'm going to use the one who beat Rousey the first time she lost. And I'm going to say Holly Holm, who has like a 49-inch leg inseam, sweeps that kick across and has prevented you from getting any strikes or anything like that. That bitch can knock your ass out.
Hey, man, everyone can take one to the jaw, right? And fucking,
yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, she could knock out Brock. Yeah. Likelihood of that happening is minimal. But at the end of the day, yeah, these are things that could legitimately happen.
And that's what you're trained to do, right?
Yeah.
So you know how to do it. You're not trying to get lucky. You know what to do. You're just trying to find your opening to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Correct.
Yeah. So that's why, like I never say, oh, I would decimate this broad, whatever the fuck. Because it's like, hey, man, you never fucking know. And the second you underestimate somebody, you've already made your first mistake.
Yep.
Especially in MMA where there's striking and grappling and different stuff. So I was a collegiate wrestler. I wrestled in college. I wasn't great in college. I was great in high school. But I was a collegiate wrestler. I wrestled in college. Shut up. So anyway, I was an All-American in college, but I was 4 and 14 the year I was an All-American. So I can explain that another year. Anyway, so let's just take that for what it is. If it was just wrestling, okay, well then I'm just in a grappling situation, and usually the best in that environment is going to be great. If you just have kickboxing, then the best is probably going to be the best almost across the board. But when you have MMA and a grappling style can completely nullify a striker, or vice versa, a striker could completely nullify a grappling style, or a submission specialist, whatever it is, those can all nullify each other in different ways, and so suddenly it's a moot point. I mean, yeah, you want to put Shayna Baszler in a sumo match with a sumo wrestler under sumo rules, Baszler's probably not going to win that.
Right.
But in the end, so much of it is about believability. And you, as WWE, you have the chance to create that believability, right?
Yeah.
If you present Shayna Baszler like she's an absolute badass, and then you put her in a match with Kalisto, it's totally believable that Shayna Baszler beats the crap out of Kalisto, right?
Oh,
and this is not
absolutely.
trying to knock on the Lucha Dragons at all. I do that enough on our normal podcast. This is just saying it's all about you create the believability in wrestling, right?
That's right.
You put Shayna Baszler against half of the male roster, and you present it right, it's 100% believable that she could beat them handily, right? You put Sasha Banks against half of the main roster, and you present her right, you can believe that she wins. That's the cool thing with wrestling is you control the narrative.
Okay. Because we brought this up, I don't want to get too, well, fuck it. Yeah, I do. Let's get controversial for a second because there's something interesting. I kind of am interested in both of your points of view on this. I don't want to shit on my career and what made me fucking known and shit, but I can't help but wonder, what do you guys think in terms of Rousey against Holly? Do you think it was a work?
Ooh. No.
And here's why I ask, because UFC is a business at the end of the day. And in business, the idea is to make money. And at the timing, you got Rousey 2 fucking years unbeaten. And then all of a sudden, she loses in a fight that seems sloppy on her end, just as she's about to be tied up in doing movies and shit. So her being an absent champ is not good for business.
Yeah, I can see where people would make that argument. And I'm a total outsider to the MMA world just in general. I've watched my fair share of Ultimate Fighter and whatnot, but I can see that. But from what we saw of Rousey in WWE, we know that she doesn't like being told to lose.
True.
And, even in a sport that's all about being told to win or lose, when she was told to lose, she whined like a little baby and then started, exposing the business on her YouTube channel and saying it's fake and shit. And so my argument for it not being a work is I don't think she would be able to have kept it secret. I think if she had been told to lose, there would have been a YouTube video of her at some point, not necessarily before it, but at some point of her saying, yeah, they fucking wanted me to lose because I was going off to movies, so.
Yeah, I thought about that too, but I thought at least with pro wrestling, you could claim that was a scripted rant type of deal. For drama, it sells tickets, right? Whereas Dana White won't put up with that shit. And your career's like fucking made there. And then there's the argument too, like Holly doesn't need to know that it's a work. True. And in boxing, how many times in boxing have people actually been told to throw a fight? It's been known to happen, right?
Yeah.
I'm not saying for sure, but I feel like there's a good possibility. The argument is definitely there.
I think there's a stronger argument for Brock's title win being a work more than
Mic check again.
Sorry, can you hear me now?
No, not really.
Hear me now?
That's better.
Okay. I think there's a stronger argument for Brock's win than for Ronda's loss. When Brock won the title, he'd only had 4 matches. It was his 4th match. And so for him to suddenly get the UFC heavyweight championship seemed biased, and then all of a sudden he gets the win on top of it. It was like, well, we need, and I can hear Joe Rogan or Dana White saying it right now. Well, we need this guy who's going to do what Tito did and who's going to do what Chuck did and could be the face of the company for the time being. I don't think you can have them do that when Ronda was the face of the company. I think they're so big into having a face of the company, and they do. It switches a lot, but they do have a face of the company a lot. And then all of a sudden, they didn't have one, and Brock gets the title, and a guy who could easily be the face of the company for a while, and he was. So I think she lost to a striker, and at the end of the day, that it's easy to get surprised by a striker,
That is true. So it's a coincidental timing, then, you think?
Yeah. I mean, I think you can make an argument for something thrown or designed to be what we need it to be. What Dana feels like it needs to be is definitely more Brock than that.
I think the human brain is really, really good at spotting patterns, even when patterns don't exist. And that's what feeds into so many conspiracy theories. And it's also what drives our show in general. So it's a good thing and a bad thing. But, like you said, we'll never truly know.
No, for sure.
We can't rule it out entirely. But, at that point in time, Ronda, UFC needed Ronda more than Ronda needed UFC anymore, because she was going off into a movie career. And she had backup options, eventually WWE was an option. So if it was a work, a lot of money probably had to be in it for her to say, yeah, I'll do it. Because she's got no incentive to go along with it except for money, right? If they say, we want you to throw the match, and she says, no, I'm not going to throw the match, what are they going to do? They can't make her lose. They can't make Holly accidentally win. You know what I mean? If she chooses not to lose, then Holly has to legitimately win. Right. And so if it was a work, there had to be enough money in it for her to leave. Because, it doesn't hurt her at all to be an absentee champ, right? She goes off to movies and keeps the belt. It doesn't hurt her one way or another. It only hurts the UFC. So for her to have done it, if she did do it, the amount of money would have had to have been pretty large. So
okay, that I can totally understand. And I don't want to get way off topic or anything, but at the in the same vein, I don't think anyone's ever going to convince me that the Conor McGregor and fucking Mayweather thing wasn't simply a business transaction where everyone gets a lot of fucking money and it's all a work.
I don't know.
You could make that argument. I mean, Conor McGregor is known for being about the money. That's his major motivator.
To me, it's like I compare it to a Freddy versus Jason kind of situation where before that movie came out, a room full of lawyers from both sides sat down and said, all right, we're both protecting the investment here. Nobody comes out looking weak. And when you have a fucking UFC fighter and a boxer in a fight and nobody leaves with so much as a black eye, come on, man. You know what I mean? Nobody's hurt.
You're going to convince me that McGregor managed to teach himself in 6 months to not ever throw a kick.
Right.
Yeah.
Everybody cleaned up and people still were foolish enough to put money on it. And I knew that it was going to be, obviously Mayweather is going to take it, but it's not going to make McGregor look bad in any way. Mm-hmm. And that's what happened.
Yeah. Well, and in the end, it helps legitimize boxing in people's eyes because a boxer beat the MMA guy. And if Mayweather had gone off to fight in MMA, they would have had it go the other way because you can't have a boxer come in and show up your MMA guys in your sport.
And right, and there's talks of that happening, but it won't happen because then it will pull the curtain back because McGregor would either destroy him or it's a work, and it's painfully obvious. So they're going to cut their losses, say, look, we made our fucking money. We don't need to do it.
Well, and like you said, it's just like if WCW and WWF at the time had made an agreement to have a cross-promo pay-per-view, right? What's going to happen? Well, in the end, it's going to be about even between who wins, right? Because for every WCW win, WWF would have come in and said, well, this guy's got to win.
Right.
You know? We can't make our people look bad.
Right. It'd be a sit-down conversation, and they'd work out something that's down the middle.
Yep.
But
you're going to have Hulk Hogan win, then we're going to have Roddy Piper win.
Right.
Okay. So in the end, there's 7 matches on the card, and it splits 3 for WCW, 3 for WWF, and 1 ends in a no contest. Ta-da!
So
I've just booked that pay-per-view.
What'd you think about Sting's loss to Hunter at Mania? Was that bullshit or what?
Yeah, but there's... If you've been a long-time listener to our podcast, you know I'm a diehard Sting fan.
Right.
He's my favorite wrestler of all time. I have hanging on the wall behind me a action figure pack that's got 6 faces of Sting from his WCW run, all going from Surfer Sting all the way up through Wolfpack Sting at the end, right?
Right.
There's the things that come into it is simply this. WWF has a long history of let's make the former WCW person look bad.
Right.
Because it helps us feel like we've made our brand look better. Look,
it's just reminding.
Better.
Yeah, it's just reminding the newer people that we put WCW out of business in that war.
Yep. Yeah, look at it. Even their biggest star still sucks compared to us, you know?
Right.
And I do think they might have had a longer-term plan for Sting that would have maybe had him become a contender in there, and then, you know, but even when he came in, we knew that he was on the downward swing of his career, right? His job at that point was to put people over, to do like Jericho has done in AEW, to be the star that helps establish the younger talent, right? And that's what they did. You know, after Hunter beat him, they put him in the feud with Seth Rollins, and obviously that was designed to make Seth Rollins look like an absolute champ in the end.
Right.
It didn't turn out that way, mostly because of a bad buckle bomb that ended Sting's career. But the plan was to make Seth Rollins look like a champ. And I feel like Sting kind of knew that when he came in. I don't think he would have come into WWE, I should say, you know, not knowing that his job is to help put over the younger talent and probably eventually have the big match with Undertaker that everyone always wanted.
Brilliant. And here's what I want to ask you specifically, since you're such a Sting fan. I had mentioned this to my producer, and she was like, dude, you fucking should be writing for this bloody company, because she loved this idea. And I said, here's something I wanted to see happen years ago. We're talking back when Shield was heel, and that time they jumped Taker. And I thought, to me, what would have been the fucking craziest, people would have, in my view, probably lost their shit if, you know, Taker's out there cutting a promo, Shield comes out, surrounds him, and starts trying to jump him. All of a sudden, lights go out, and when they come back on, Taker's confused as shit, so he had nothing to do with it. All the Shield motherfuckers are laid out, and in the dead center of the ring's a black baseball bat. Mm-hmm. And it then lead to a fucking Taker like, I don't need your fucking help, especially not some outsider, right? And there's your feud for Mania.
Yeah. I mean, ultimately, that's something, if it would have happened 5, 6, 7, 10 years ago, I would have been 100% down for it.
Yeah, now it would be an embarrassment.
The problem is there are a lot of people out there right now saying that they should build for Taker versus Sting at next year's WrestleMania. And, you know, first of all, we all know Sting right now is retired due to an injury.
Right.
He has said before that he thinks he could get cleared to wrestle again, that his neck feels good and all of this stuff, but that he doesn't want to.
Right.
Of course, it wouldn't be the first time a wrestler said that they're retired and then they come out of retirement. So it happens all the time in wrestling. So we'll take that with a grain of salt. But the simple fact is, we're talking about a guy who is on the downward edge of his career already, and now has not wrestled a match in 3 years, 4
That's
years
true.
now. You know, and even if he keeps himself in great shape, you as an MMA fighter can attest. It doesn't matter how good a shape you keep yourself in if you're not constantly practicing on the actual MMA fighting.
Right.
You're going to be rusty. You're going to not have your edge when it comes. And it's the same thing with wrestling. When people sit on their, no matter how good a shape they're in, if they're not out there actually honing their wrestling craft, they definitely look at it. And I think the perfect example of it is last year's Saudi Arabia show with Goldberg.
Absolutely.
Goldberg was in good shape, but he obviously had been focusing on physical conditioning and not focusing on ring work.
How to take bumps and have those injuries and
yeah, you talk to wrestlers, especially wrestlers like the ones in AEW right now. AEW has a really light schedule because they don't do house shows, so they wrestle once a week on Wednesdays. And then every couple of months they have a pay-per-view where they wrestle on a Saturday, right? Other than that, they're not. And you talk to some of these people who go 2 or 3 weeks without actually wrestling, and they say when they try to wrestle, their body doesn't know the moves quite as well, and when they take bumps, it hurts more, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is part of why Joey Janela just got a lot of crap online because he announced that he is returning to the indie scene full time. Right, he's going to be wrestling full time on the indies in addition to his role in AEW. And people are like, "So are you quitting AEW?" And he's like, "No, I found out that I thought I wasn't allowed to wrestle the indies, but I found out that I just had to get it cleared." And I was finding that in between matches, my body was kind of, for lack of a better term, losing the calluses.
That's exactly what I was going to call it. Once you're not so calloused, it's fresh and it hurts again.
Mm-hmm. And so he's going back to the indies so that he can wrestle on the indies in between his stints in AEW and rebuild those physical calluses again. So I would have loved to see Sting versus Undertaker 10 years ago.
Yeah. To me, when I think about it now, the first thing I think about is how sad it was, how heartbreaking it was to watch Michaels and Hunter against Taker and Kane in that Saudi thing.
Yep.
That was a fucking embarrassment.
Yeah. Or Taker versus Goldberg last year was another one where it was just like, Taker didn't bring his A game to it, but Goldberg didn't bring his A game. So in the end, it was two wrestlers who had previously been top of the world, and it just made us feel like, And I would rather go out with my last memory of Sting in the ring being the match versus Seth Rollins where he got injured and he wasn't able to wrestle again, than to have him come back and have this big feud with Undertaker and put together a substandard match. So I'm happy. Yes, I would have preferred Sting to go out on top some way. But I'm happier with the way he went out now than I would have been with him coming back. I think so.
Honestly,
if you've watched the Broken Skull sessions, several of these have been with guys who are now semi-retired or fully retired. That's Stone Cold's new show on the network.
Yeah, it's a great show.
Fantastic. Every single time they talk about not being in take bump shape, whether it was Mark Calloway, who's the Undertaker, whether it was Paul Wright, whether it was Glenn Jacobs, all three of them. And if you're a real wrestling fan, I should have to tell you who all those are. So we'll just move on. Every single one of them has talked about when they got the call from Vince, and they're like, I don't know if I can take the bumps in a one-on-one or an extended match, or Big Show's was recent that he was called to go help against Seth Rollins and AOP, and so he didn't have to take a lot of bumps because Kevin Owens and Samoa Joe were going to do most of that for him. The next week he had to take a few more, so he had to train differently to get those calluses back on. Taker has said every time he comes back, it takes 3 months to recover.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Like 40 years old, so
yeah.
He also probably could kick my ass in a fight, but that's there.
Yeah.
You know,
who am I kidding? Alexa Bliss could kick my ass in a fight, so I'm not gonna.
you would let Alexa Bliss kick your ass in a fight?
Maybe, but that's beside the point.
I would not fight her at all. She could just beat the piss out of me, and I ain't mad at it, man.
Well, and that actually kind of brings me to a crime. Normally we present these crimes on our show, but I figured I'd introduce your audience a bit to one of our crimes. A crime that I wanted to file. It came to me when watching SmackDown Friday night. Tattness, did you watch SmackDown?
Always, yeah.
Okay. So they had a Moment of Bliss segment right at the beginning of the show, right?
Yep.
And it started off with Alexa Bliss and Nikki in the ring. Some stuff happens. It's not important to this crime. And eventually they introduced the NWO to talk about being inducted into the Hall of Fame this year. And that's the segment itself was not great. There was a lot of production errors. It looked like at least one time someone either forgot their cue or line, or someone backstage didn't hear the cue or line either. I don't know.
Waltman, I'm looking at you.
but yeah, there was a moment where they just kind of sat there for 15 seconds. Obviously, something was supposed to happen, and it didn't, and everyone looked confused. And, this kind of ties into us talking about veterans here. We're talking about ring shape for them taking bumps, but there's also promo shape that you can get in or out of. And all three of those retired people are probably out of peak promo shape, And Absolutely. So they were trying to deliver their lines and all this stuff, and someone got messed up. Whatever, right? I can look past that. That's not the crime. The crime comes a little bit later. So then you have Sami Zayn's music hit, and Sami Zayn, it's not Sami Zayn.
Shinsuke.
Is it Shinsuke? Yeah, Shinsuke and Sami Zayn. Yeah, Sami Zayn's music hits, and Shinsuke, Sami Zayn, and Cesaro come out. And they start talking smack about the Hall of Famers and all of this stuff, and how they're going to take back the Intercontinental belt this week at Elimination Chamber in their match versus Braun Strowman. And it leads to kind of a showdown where they tease, like, maybe the NWO is going to fight Shinsuke, Sami, and Cesaro. But we know for a fact that they're not. Kevin Nash is not in ring shape whatsoever. In fact, he posted a picture on his Twitter not too long ago about how much he's had to rehab his legs because he'd screwed his legs up over years of wrestling, and he's finally got legs back to where he can actually walk comfortably again, right? So we know he's not going to wrestle a match. We know Razor Ramon, Scott Hall's not going to wrestle a match. Waltman probably could have pulled out something passable, maybe, but we just knew there wasn't going to be. And then, of course, Braun Strowman's music hits. He comes down to the ring, and he takes out Cesaro, and he takes out Shinsuke, and he goes to attack Sami Zayn. And here's where the crime comes. Sami Zayn then gets behind Alexa Bliss and holds her in front of him like a human shield to stop Braun Strowman from attacking him, right? Alexa Bliss is a former 5-time women's champion from both brands, Raw and SmackDown. She's also a former women's tag team champion, and her partner, Nikki Cross, is standing right there. Sami Zayn is not a big guy. He plays a threat. He plays a coward character. So why the fuck did you write this where Alexa Bliss and Nikki Cross just stand there like damsels in distress instead of fucking kicking him right in the face and saying, fight your own damn battles, right?
Right. Absolutely.
that's my crime, is whoever wrote that script. I think, to me, it shows the lack of representation in the writer's room, right? It shows
Absolutely.
that the writer's room is probably a bunch of dudes standing around saying, hey, how should we do this? Oh, we should have Sami Zayn hold Alexa Bliss, and Alexa Bliss just looks all scared. Oh, my God, Sami Zayn's going to hurt me. And I think if there was one woman in that writer's room, they would have just stood up and said, well, I don't know. Alexa Bliss knows how to fight, right? Why doesn't she fight back at all?
Right.
So I'm charging the WWE with not having any women in the writing room, and writing just absolute shitty women's characters for that particular segment.
That goes back to our Cornette sexism piece, too.
It is. We've talked about that. You know, there's no reason to think that Alexa Bliss couldn't have stood up to Sami Zayn, right?
Right.
And there's no rules to how she does it. She can nutshot him.
Yeah.
It doesn't make you a heel for defending yourself by stepping on his insole, hitting him in the groin, you know, all the things that are self-defense taught. In fact, it empowers women. So the women
people
who
would
watch,
pop large for that.
yeah, hell yeah. I learned that in a class, too.
Exactly. You know? And so it to me was just an absolute bullshit moment. That took me out of the wrestling, that they just stuck to this whole damsel in distress gimmick when you've got someone who previously in that thing had mentioned that she was a former tag champion, and is a 5-time women's champion across both of your main roster brands. There's no reason to not have her fight back, right? Or to not have Nikki Cross step in and fight back. Nikki Cross is a former tag champion, and her character is a fucking psycho, right?
Exactly.
And instead she stood there and kind of did the little playful swatting of her hands at Sammy, like, oh, stop.
Yeah, that was weird to me. That felt out of place. It made me giggle a little bit because I was like, that's so ridiculous. But it was kind of like, what the fuck was that supposed to do? You know?
Dumb, and whoever wrote that should feel bad.
Right. And I know it's not my jurisdiction, but I want to throw a crime out there myself that Sami Zayn looks like a Ginger Castro with that fucking hat on.
Ginger Castro. That's going to go on the greatest hits for 2019, 2020. I'm just leaving it at that.
Every time you look at him, tell me I'm fucking wrong now.
Well, you know, I mean, Sami Zayn just in general is a crime for the fact that they're not having him wrestle hardly at all.
It's true.
The guy can fucking go, and you're having him be a manager.
I know. It's a shame, really.
Yeah, it's a shame. It's that whole stable is a shame. You've got Shinsuke, who was on the verge of being one of the best heels in the business with his no speaker English.
That killed me.
Because it was so perfectly done. It wasn't a stereotype that he didn't speak English. It was all based on the idea that he spoke English just fine, but he would use that as an excuse to not talk when he didn't want to talk.
Right, not answer questions and explain why he did some shitty things.
Mm-hmm. No, you
and
did
I thought
something
that was
really
so
bad.
funny.
No speaker English.
That's brilliant.
Do I don't do any answers?
It was great. And then you've got Cesaro, who, pound for pound, might be one of the most talented people in WWE.
Extremely, yeah.
But his character is basically, I don't know, he's the bald guy who comes out and loses.
He looks like fucking, you know, the poor man's Jason Statham. Mm-hmm. And the guy's extremely talented. He's strong as shit. He trains like a fucking animal. And you do nothing with him?
Yeah.
His biggest claim to fame is fucking tag team matches.
The simple fact is, and this is part of why AEW excites me so much, right? If you listen to my podcast, our podcast, you know that we talk a lot about AEW, and we're really excited for it.
Oh, and I don't blame you. Yeah, I've noticed that. I'm like, well, shit, I got to get on this and watch this more.
Cesaro over in AEW would be one of their top 5 stars.
Easily.
Right? Easily. Cesaro in WWE, buried in the mid-card at best.
And it'll stay that way.
World champion in AEW.
He very, very easily could be, yeah. Because here's the deal: you can fix character problems, you can fix mic skill problems. In fact, I would bet he's actually better on the mic in AEW because he's not having to recite a script word for word. He'd be able to improv a bit. What you can't fix is someone who doesn't have talent. He's got an absolute assload of talent. I would call it a metric shit ton, which, as we all know, is bigger than a standard shit ton.
Absolutely.
I think it's like 2.6 shit tons. Anyways.
Yeah. And a pant load on top.
Exactly. He's got the skill. I mean, can you imagine a Cesaro versus Kenny Omega match?
That'd be brilliant.
You know, lights out. Give me more. Feed me. You know?
Yeah, man.
Okay, now we're making Ryback references. What's that?
I was actually making a little Shop of Horrors reference. Thank you very much.
All right, fair enough.
So when's the pay-per-view between you two?
It'll happen someday. We love each other like brothers, and as we all know, brothers sometimes fight.
Oh yeah.
Don't shake hands.
Yeah.
Did you guys happen to catch that apparently maybe after Mania, whether it be a Raw match or whatever the fuck, Samoa wants Taker?
That would be good.
Right?
I mean, Samoa Joe can do it. Yeah. The only thing I can say on it, though, is please, for the love of God, Samoa Joe, change your ring attire. Your shorts drive me fucking nuts.
We crack up, my producer and I, we always claim he's looking for the fucking pool and he never finds it because he comes out with his towel and his fucking swim shorts on. That's why he's so frustrated.
Here? No? Oh.
That's why we say he's always...
Match.
We always say that's why he's so pissed off all the time. He hasn't found the guy just wants to swim, man.
I came down to the lobby. The pool was supposed to be over here. I go over there, and it's a fucking wrestling ring. I'm pissed.
It's like the old WCW Jericho can't find the fucking ring gimmick.
Yeah. And that's the AEW. Part of why it excites me so much is they know that, especially with people backstage like Arn Anderson, Tully Blanchard, Jericho helping out backstage. They've got some of the best talkers in the history of the business. You know, the best ones alive, I should say, backstage helping out, right?
Absolutely.
They can take pretty much anybody as long as they've got talent in the ring and they can turn them into a well-rounded future star, right?
Absolutely.
And they're investing in their younger generation. You know, at the same time as WWF or WWE put their top title on a 53-year-old retired wrestler, AEW had the next generation superstar beat their 49-year-old still full-time wrestler on a pay-per-view for the biggest belt and make him look like an absolute rock star. Right.
Absolutely.
And it shows a lot
about the story at the same time.
Yeah. Because it shows a lot about how they approached it. They did this whole thing where they built up, they used Jericho the best way they could, right? To help him bring in some lapsed fans, some people who are like, oh, I remember Chris Jericho. Make him the champion, have him keep the belt by heel tactics for 6 months, either avoiding matches when he can, or having matches but getting help from Jake Hager or whoever to win the match. And then in the end, lose to your top guy to set him up and look like an absolute fucking rock star.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's where AEW, I mean, there's so many young, talented people that are made to look so great on that show that it just excites me. And we've talked before about how it really resembles the Monday Night Wars when WCW was pushing the envelope and pushing to make WWF at the time better by doing stuff that WWF wasn't doing and making them adjust. And There's no doubt in my mind that WWE is adjusting for AEW, despite the fact that Vince McMahon keeps saying that he is not changing anything because of AEW. I made a tweet about it the other day because 2 years ago they made the big they didn't actually announce it, but it just happened that they got rid of pyro on WWF or WWE shows, right? And then AEW comes out and has pyro, and then all of a sudden WWE shows are fucking war zones when they start off because there's pyro everywhere.
There's suddenly like a fucking Michael Bay movie.
Exactly. Explosions everywhere. And you cannot tell me that they made that decision totally independent of AEW.
Right. Come on.
That's just pissing on me and telling me it's raining.
Right. I don't believe in coincidence, and that's pretty blatant.
WWE would not have put NXT on free TV USA Network if AEW was not already broadcasting or had already announced to be broadcasting on TNT at the same time on Wednesday nights, right?
Right.
NXT would still be a WWE Network only exclusive if AEW wasn't on Wednesday nights. That's the simple fact. But
Absolutely.
The fact that AEW came along, WWE changed their tune and put NXT on Wednesday nights. And here's the deal: it's made everything better.
Yep.
We've talked on our podcast before. Wednesday night is the night that I literally rush home from work to make sure that I can watch my wrestling. Like Monday night, I've got a DVR. So when I get home, I can start watching after I cook dinner or whatever, and then I can fast forward through the commercials and fast forward through Bobby Lashley and Lana. Friday night is basically the same. Oh, we've got stuff to do. We've got to go to the store and get groceries for the week. And, baby girl needs to be taken to the park so that she can run around and everything. So, but I can stay up late and watch SmackDown, right? But Wednesday night, I'm like, I'm coming home. I'm sitting in front of the TV. I'm watching AEW, and then immediately I'm turning over to the DVR and watching NXT. That's the way it is, right? Absolutely. Wednesday night is must-watch TV time for me.
It really does feel like the 90s all over again, doesn't it?
Yes, it really does.
In the best possible way, you know?
Yeah. Well, and so you mentioned earlier that Jericho, obviously frequently is putting over the younger talent. I think back to Jungle Jack, his match with Jericho in AEW, and I don't know, Tattness, I don't know if you've seen this or not, but it reminded me of the Jeff Hardy versus Undertaker feud before Jeff ever had a world title.
Absolutely.
You remember that, the ladder match that Taker won?
That was brilliant.
And Jeff is in the ring. He gets and actually, I think Smarks, you weren't heavily watching at that time.
I think it was during my last time. Yes.
So it's post Attitude Era. It's really during the Ruthless Aggression era.
Yes.
And Jeff gets a mic and says, "You didn't break me." After Taker's beat him. I mean, just beat him. I mean, it was a beatdown.
It really was.
You didn't beat me. And Taker comes out and picks him up. Now, not the exact same thing happened in that Jungle Jack versus Jericho match, but the same effect happened. Mm-hmm. The exact same effect happened. He doesn't tap out to the walls for a minute and a half. Is that right, Sparks?
Yep. Something like that.
90 seconds, 120 seconds, somewhere in there, doesn't tap out to the walls. Jericho thinks he won it because it's a time limit draw. And I love their use of the time limit draw. I love the use of their time limit draw. Mm-hmm. But that's the type of storytelling that you can tell. One match, just one match tells this huge story for this young up-and-comer. And he doesn't even have to win the match. Same thing happened in the Darby Allin versus Cody match. So the time limit draw is an absolute gift to young stars that I think WWE is really missing.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, how much easier would it have been to put Kofi over if he has a couple time limit draws before he has to run the gauntlet, loses running the gauntlet, but come on, he did something that was nearly impossible to do. I think there's you can put mid cards over very, very well there. At the end of the day, tonight there's a match that will put 0 people over, none whatsoever. Braun Strowman's gonna do big guy stuff and beat and that's what it is. That's really their mentality. You are a world's strongest man competitor. You get some big guy stuff.
Right.
Big guy stuff. And you fight 3 guys and you win. Or if he loses, it doesn't get over those 3 guys.
No,
it doesn't get Braun any more over than he already is because he's doing big guy stuff. Like, where's the game? Like, there's no game.
That's exactly it. Right.
We aren't going to see Sami Zayn, show off his first ever haluva kick. Like nothing's going to be gained here out of this, and all of these characters are already developed. So let's develop a storyline there, and in the places where we need to develop a character, let's develop a character. There's not a freaking storyline here. There's not that hasn't been told already with these same characters. There's nothing there in that match, and at the same time, we don't have an actual reason for Roman to face Goldberg.
Right.
And we don't have that match tonight either.
He came out and said, "I'm next." That's the reason.
He just cut in line like that asshole in Walmart.
Yep.
Thinks he's the center of the fucking world, right?
Yep.
How dare you go look and see if there's Coke in the next aisle? I'm in front of you, fucker.
See, now I don't know about you guys. I don't know fucking how long you've been watching this shit, but I'm an 80s kid, man. So when I was just a little kid, my grandfather watched it in the 80s. So I grew up having to watch it. And then by the time I was like 5 or 6 years old, about 5, I would catch myself watching it when he wasn't even home. And so then I was like, oh, I guess I'm into it now. You know what I mean? So I grew up with Hogan and Andre and all that shit. And back then, there were those time limit matches where it's like 15 minutes per match. And you would commonly see them go over. Time's up, no one won. And it wasn't really a far-fetched thing.
Yeah. No, I came a little bit later. No one in my family watched wrestling. I come from a bunch of fucking intellectuals, so they're all like, all of that stuff. I'm the black sheep of that family, but I came into it in the early 90s. I had some bouts of insomnia that kept me up late at night, and there were reruns on that I would watch. And that's when I kind of came into Surfer Sting and all of that as the slow rise of WCW and then the launch of Nitro and so on and so forth. And then for me, when the Monday Night Wars ended and WCW got bought out, I continued to watch for a while, but seeing some of my favorite stars from WCW just being shit on by WWF, because that's what they did at the time, is we'll take these WCW stars and we'll show you why our stars are better. And it kind of turned me off. And so, I basically say the Ruthless Aggression era is my away time, my hiatus, right?
Okay.
It started a little bit before Ruthless Aggression, but by the time the Ruthless Aggression era kind of started, I was off doing other stuff. And then, I kind of started to come back into it, and I'll say Ring of Honor was my gateway drug back into it.
Okay.
I caught a Ring of Honor replay late at night, and I saw some people doing this wrestling on Ring of Honor that was totally unlike what you see on WWE. It was very work rate focused. It wasn't, there's a formula to a WWE match that you can see as you've watched it for longer. You can kind of see these formulas kind of come out,
Yep.
And things at Ring of Honor didn't follow that, and so it was exciting to me. And I got to see some people like Adam Cole before he was in WWE, when he was on the Independents, like Bobby Fish and Kyle O'Reilly when they were in Ring of Honor as Red Dragon, you know, and a bunch of that. And so I started watching that, and then when people like Adam Cole, baby, started coming over to NXT and signing with WWE, I started to watch a little bit more on both sides. And that's when I got re-hooked and back into it. But, you know, there were times during the Attitude Era and shortly after that I tried to turn on and I'd watch WWE and I'd be like, I don't know who any of these fuckers are. You know, oh, here's Sheamus out there fighting against some guy who thinks he's a rapper. Nah, not for me. And I'd turn it off. So that's, I think that in a way gives me kind of a unique perspective, because I am kind of the embodiment of the lapsed fan that WWE really wants to get back. You know, the people who were watching the Monday Night Wars when there were 6 million people in the United States watching, or 7 million or 8 million watching Monday Night Raw and Nitro, right, combined.
Right.
And now, you know, WWE thinks they've got a really great day if they've got 2 million people watching on Raw. And there was literally 5 times that many at times during the Monday Night Wars. And so much of the Ruthless Aggression era is why a lot of us lapsed fans stopped. You know, when WWE didn't have competition to drive them to be better, to drive them to be edgier and do some stuff, they kind of sat back on their laurels, sat down and said, okay, now we can be the PG, you know, thing that we wanted to be. And we can have the kid-friendly characters like the rapper and all of this stuff, you know, and have fun with that and not do anything really important. And that's part of why the AEW revival is so exciting, because you've got 1.7 million people now watching on Wednesday night between Dynamite and NXT. You know, there's almost 2 million people watching on a Wednesday night. And remember, up until now, Wednesday night had never been a destination wrestling night, right?
Absolutely right.
Monday night was always huge for wrestling.
Yeah.
Thursday night had, Thunder for WCW, and then eventually SmackDown was on it for a while, and then it was Friday night SmackDown, and then there was Tuesday night SmackDown for a long time, but Wednesday night was always the night that there had never been wrestling on. So you can't even blame it on, oh, it's people who just tuned in because it's a wrestling night. These are all people who specifically sought out watching wrestling on a Wednesday night. And why did they do that? Because AEW and NXT are exciting. AEW and NXT give them what they want that they're not getting from Monday night and Friday night right now.
Here's something to blow your mind, because in Canada things were different, scheduling wise.
Yes.
So this was my 90s. Monday night you had Raw. Tuesday at about 4 p.m. on TSN, which is the Canadian sports channel, we had the Raw repeat. Then Wednesday, Monday Nitro was aired. Then Thursday, you had Thunder. Friday was the only night you didn't have wrestling. Then Saturday, you had fucking WWF's weekend show. Then Sunday was a pay-per-view. So it was like every fucking day of the week you had wrestling, but it was never overexposure.
Yeah. So because of that, when WCW tried to ruin the ending of the Mick Foley title win, that really made no sense to you because it was 2 days afterwards.
Right. So it didn't do nothing for me. But I still thought, wow, you guys are dicks for doing that.
Yeah, they were dicks. No one has ever tried to say that Eric Bischoff isn't a dick.
Right.
Eric Bischoff has never tried to say that Eric Bischoff is a dick.
No. I'm including him in the no one has ever said that. He is a dick, and that's why he was so good at his character on TV.
It was brilliant.
We talked a little bit earlier here about it, but the best wrestling characters are usually someone's personality just turned up to 11, right?
Absolutely.
I think The Rock even said that one time.
I think that's like common knowledge now because it's been proven time and time again.
Unless you're an Asian person in WWE, then your character is you're Asian.
And all they do is yell. Yeah. Except for Shinsuke is the complete opposite. He's like super chill.
Yeah.
He doesn't have to do the Asuka thing.
Yeah. Yeah. So.
However, I think that's why Duke the Dumpster Drozy was so good, because he really was just a garbage man turned up to 11.
He was
garbage, all right. Now, I got to admit that, much like yourself, you said that you didn't get into things till a little later on. I didn't get into WCW until about 96 when the whole NWO thing started. I was so in that WWF bubble, I would say, that I wasn't familiar enough with anybody in WCW to go watch it except for Hogan. And I was like, by that point, I was more invested in the Shawn and, all the younger guys. So you got Michaels doing his thing. And back then, here's where it feels like a completely different world. Back then, on weekend shows, you had Hall, Nash, Michaels, Brett, fucking all these big names, Taker. They're all doing the shitty weekend shows that now, it's all fucking small-time guys and highlights. You know what I mean? But the IC championship back then was more important than the fucking... You can't remember who the fuck the heavyweight champ was back then, but you had Scott Hall, Nash, Michaels in that three-way thing for the IC championship fucking every weekend in 95, and that belt was so relevant. And it was like, maybe Brett had the heavyweight championship against like Yokozuna. Nobody gave a shit. You know what I mean?
I was about to say, I actually started when Yokozuna was the world champion. That's when I started watching, and it was because of Pettengill. Like the commentator was the reason that I did it. So there was no chance in hell the one TV in my house through probably 95, 96, the one freaking TV in my house was going to get in my fucking hands in the evening. But Saturday morning at 10 o'clock, I had that.
Right.
And Pettengill's show, which they don't do a recap show anymore for WWE. I guess you could maybe call Backstage a recap show, but they don't do a Saturday morning recap show anymore. Probably because of fuckers like us who do podcasts and do all the recaps. But that's why they didn't have it, and that's how I actually fell in love with it, was a recap show that you saw half a fucking match with highlights.
Yeah. Now, if Cornette's aneurysm didn't finish him off, this probably will, but a lot of people are going to be like shaking their head at me, but I'm a fucking big time Nash guy for some reason. I don't know. I always liked the guy.
I loved his 1 year run as the champion.
I always liked
my love for wrestling. I don't know why, but it was Diesel.
Yeah, and I mean, I loved him in WWF as Diesel. I loved his honesty in WCW. He just doesn't give a fuck. I love his shoot interviews. He doesn't give a shit. And there's just something about the guy that I can get on board with. So I've always been a fucking big-time Nash guy. And I know people don't get it because they're like, the guy's got like 5 fucking moves. Well, have you ever heard of Cena? I mean, the guy's not exactly an encyclopedia of wrestling holds.
Listen, if your 5 fucking moves work, then you just do them, right? If you were playing Street Fighter and you were Chun-Li and could sweep the legs all the time and win, then that's what you fucking do.
Right.
Sweep the legs, high kick, sweep the legs, high kick, win.
You decide to be fucking Eddie Gordo and Tekken, and you just fucking do flip-de-doos all day long because you don't know any action. So you're just fucking hitting the buttons, and there you got it. You won.
Just button mash until something happens.
Well, I mean, it's kind of the thing. On AEW last week, they had Jake the Snake Roberts come out, and he is starting. He's apparently going to be the manager of someone coming into AEW, and we can speculate until the cows come home as to who it is. But he challenges Cody, right? And Cody currently has Arn Anderson as his coach. They call him a coach, not a manager. But and he actually called Arn Anderson a one-trick pony, right? Which is funny, and it goes back to all the shit that happened between Arn and Jake the Snake and back in history and all this stuff. But someone posted a GIF on Twitter of Arn Anderson delivering a spine buster. And I said, hey, if that's your fucking one trick, then you don't need any other tricks, right?
Right. It's
Arn Anderson's spine buster was a work of art.
Right.
It was phenomenal. But that's the deal is, yeah, if you've got 5 moves and one of them's to size them up in the corner and then deliver the elbow, and one of them's take your big-ass leg and put it up against their face in the corner, and one of them's the jackknife powerbomb, you've got 2 extra moves that you don't need 9 times out of 10.
That's right.
You know? He had a sidewalk slam, too. His was pretty epic.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And I mean, he did the whole big dude thing really well, in my view.
Yep, he did.
I think a lot of that stems from he genuinely believed in Big Dude, though.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Genuinely believed in it because he was pissed when Benoit and Guerrero both were the champions at the same time. Like, he went on fucking record.
Right.
This is stupid. This is bad for the industry. And maybe he's right, because the industry really started to decline right after that. I don't think he was right, but maybe he was.
Yeah, maybe to some degree, or maybe it just happened to be at that time the industry was going in a completely different direction that was so unfamiliar to people that it takes you a minute to really figure it out and get on board with it. Because it definitely steered away from what we're used to. Because let's be real, it really was a big man-centric kind of, it goes all the way back to King Kong Bundy and fucking, all the biggest guys, right?
Well, I mean, what steered WWF at the time away from that was the steroid scandal, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
They got caught encouraging people to juice up. And so they were like, well, we're going to show you. But what happened, right? Suddenly you had Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels emerging as the faces of your company, right?
Right.
In many ways, that was the best fucking thing that could have happened to you. Because people were tired at the time of random big guy versus random big guy. And what happened was those big guys went over to WCW, and this was long before NWO. WCW kind of languished along with the big guys, because people didn't want to fucking see it anymore.
Absolutely.
Whether we want to admit it or not, Hogan's still 6'7", 280 pounds in his prime.
Yeah, absolutely.
So he's still a big dude. He's still the same size as Razor.
Yep. And so then I mean, everything has cycles, ups and downs, right? And so they went to big man, and then they come down to work rate, and then they went back up to big man for a while, and then they're going to come down to work rate. And right now we're in a work rate cycle, right? And I hope it lasts a long time because it's fucking phenomenal.
Absolutely.
But anyone a week ago on Dynamite, well, 2 weeks ago now, they had a 30-minute long Iron Man match. Kenny Omega versus Pac. And I don't know how familiar you are with both of those wrestlers. Pac used to wrestle in WWE as Neville, right? But when he was in WWE, he was just kind of flip-de-doo novelty act.
Yeah, I felt he was being misused terribly.
Mm-hmm. And he was. And then he was booked to lose to Enzo, which anyone who says, we're going to book you to lose to Enzo, I don't care why, they should be fired. Right. But so booked to lose to Enzo, and so he lost and said, fuck it, I'm taking my ball and going home. But now he's legitimately one of the top 5 work rate guys in the world. And they put on a 30-minute fucking clinic and it was awesome.
Yeah,
And I'm
absolutely.
pissed because that match actually took place in Kansas City, which is about a 5-hour drive from where I'm at. And ZA Fabe and I had talked about going to it, but it was February in the center of the United States. We weren't sure the roads were going to be good enough. Spoiler alert, they were just fucking fine. So we could have gone to it and seen that in person, and we didn't. And so I'm pissed and jealous of everyone who got to see it.
Want to go to Denver Wednesday?
Yeah. Well, let's pack our bags and go. We're on it. And Boston's going to be pissed.
You know, in 97, by that point, everyone had the internet and shit. You know what I mean? It started in 95. People were just starting to get computers at home and get the internet, and it was really bare bones. It was shit. By 97, you know, you could start fucking buying your tickets and shit on the internet. And I remember one day checking out Raw tickets went on sale, and they were already sold out fucking within the hour. And it was like, holy shit, that was quick when they were coming to Toronto. Because that was like, fucking 30-minute drive for me. And within an hour of the tickets being on sale, they were fucking sold out. It was such a big thing back then. They were doing big numbers.
Yeah. So, fun fact, talking about 97, frequent contributor to our podcast, Justin LeBlanc, was actually at Survivor Series 97.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Fuck.
Yeah, he's talked about it. We've threatened to kick his ass if he doesn't stop talking about it sometime. We didn't threaten him.
What do you think about Bret Hart, man?
I love Bret Hart. Bret Hart was one of the WWF guys that I absolutely loved. And we actually even talked about it on our podcast a couple weeks ago. How was it even just 1 week ago? How I was so excited for him to come over to WCW. And I would, one of those people who's just marking out about how great the matches are going to be, all of this stuff, to have the excellence of execution over on WCW TV and all of this stuff.
We're going to get Hogan versus Bret.
Yeah, finally Hogan versus Bret, but then Bret Hart versus Sting. Oh, that could be so great, and all this stuff. But it's kind of one of those things where the circumstances conspired against everything. Right. What happens to his brother was an absolute fucking tragedy. And it was a tragedy in every respect. And you could basically tell after that moment that Bret Hart didn't have it in him anymore. No. He was done. He checked out.
WCW didn't know what the fuck to do with him anyway.
Yeah. They had no clue. And some of that is just, if you listen to any of the Backstage WCW podcasts, like Eric Bischoff's podcast, or read any of the books, they really wanted Bret Hart a year earlier. And they had plans for him a year earlier. And then he spurned them and re-signed with WWF at the time and signed the lifetime contract. And so WCW didn't think they were ever going to have him. And then all of a sudden in 97, he calls them up and says, hey, they're going to let me out of my contract. Can I come over there? And WCW was like, yeah, we'll take you. But they didn't have any plans, They just thought that pot of gold had just fallen into their lap, and so they took it. And, because of that, he just came out and, was there for the most part. But then the Owen Hart stuff happened, and, you could tell he was just phoning everything in from then on.
Yeah. And you can't blame him.
No, you can't. In many ways, the best thing that he probably could have done at that point would have been just to say, you know what, I'm done. I can't do this anymore. My heart's not in it. Let's go. And, unfortunately, whether he chose to keep going or someone from WCW put pressure on him to keep going, either way, it probably wasn't the best thing for him. And he just kind of languished along, and it was kind of sad to see that. But one of my favorite matches of absolute all time is the 60-minute Iron Man between him and Shawn Michaels.
Absolutely brilliant.
And it was brilliant because it went 60 minutes with no falls, right?
Exactly.
And that's what so many Iron Man matches, end with 6 falls, and it's 3-3, and who's going to get that last one?
Yeah, exactly.
But the storyline told from 60 minutes, these people tried to put each other away, and neither of them could get a single pinfall. Was a way better storyline in many ways.
Right.
So,
not to mention with the animosity between the two, it was like neither one was willing to fucking let the other one have that one on the other. So it went 60 fucking minutes without either one, budging on that, no matter what they went through. It was like, there's no fucking way.
It was phenomenal storytelling. But, at the same point, do you think you'd ever see that happen in WWE today? And the answer is no. No matter how good the work rate people are, you could have Daniel Bryan in there versus Aleister Black or Johnny Gargano, right? But the WWE way today would not have been to have that in 60 minutes, no falls. No. It would have been to have it in 60 minutes with 5-4 victory.
Absolutely. I had taken time away since we were talking about the Brett thing with Owen and whatever. I can totally relate. I took, time away from it because my son was born with a terminal condition and he passed away. So obviously I was tending to that, and I knew that my heart's not going to be in it. You know what I mean? Like, obviously priorities. So, when he was diagnosed, I had that going on while I was still training. And I found myself getting into situations because I've got a lot on my plate. I'm stressed out. I'm taking things the wrong way. I'm getting into fucking fights in the locker room with guys in my own camp because I'm just pissed, right? And so I had to be talked to where it's like, dude, there's only so much I can explain with you. I understand what's going on, but it comes down to like the athletics commission where they're going to think you got a fucking attitude problem. You need to get your shit together and like figure it out before you fuck this up for yourself. And I understood that, you know what I mean? And it was like, I realized I took things the wrong way. I thought someone was shitting on the business that was giving me my opportunity. I didn't like it, so I fucking, you know what I mean? Bad attitude at the time. And since then, obviously, things have been fucking great. But I also didn't know a lot going into it. I would get into, like, fights in the octagon where, like, within the first fucking minute, I'd knock somebody the fuck out. Like, more than once. And then I'm talked to about that, where it's like, look, man, it's great and all. Because I'm in the mentality of a win's a win. And they're like, if you want to make it to where you're going to make serious fucking money, you have to understand people want entertainment, and this ain't it. You got to pace yourself and fucking take some hits. Let this become a good fight. You can't just be fucking laying people the fuck out, because people, that's boring. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. It's basically half the plot of Gladiator.
Right. And I initially, at the time, I was thinking, what the fuck, man? Like, nothing I do is good enough. Because it's like, I'm winning. But then I realized, I put it in perspective. I'm like, okay, say a football game or a hockey game or whatever. I don't want to see, even if it's my team winning, I don't want to see a landslide fucking win. I want to see a close game. That's exciting. So then I understood. And I was like, oh, okay, I get it now. It clicked, right? So then it was like, all right, I can do that. And it's like, now it's fun. You know what I mean? Because it feels like a competition.
Please tell me at some point you screamed out, "Are you not entertained?"
I wish I could say I did. It more came out as, for fuck's sakes. You know, like, what do you want from me? Because it seemed like winning, to me, was the objective. And then I'm being told, like, the way I'm going about it, it's not really engaging to people. Okay, the first couple times, it's fucking amazing. But then when it's, like, all the time, it's like, dude, people want to see an actual fight. You know, nobody wants to see Mike Tyson fucking fight an infant. You know, it's just...
Oh.
I don't know. I probably would have tuned in for that.
So, it was a learning curve, honestly. It's very true that it gets to a point where it's like, okay, look, man, if you really want to be considered for something bigger, you have to understand that it's a business. It's an entertainment business, and they want people entertained. People have to buy tickets and want to see your fights. And it gets boring real fast when they only last fucking, like 60 seconds or less. So it's like, you have to fucking learn the pace and learn how to make things interesting. And, without risking fucking gassing out or putting yourself in a situation where you're going to get fucking hit to a point where it fucks you up. But that's where the defense comes in now. You got to learn fucking more about defending yourself, blocking, and planning ahead, seeing what people do and planning for what they're going to do. Study them, know their fucking techniques and their habits and shit like that. So then it became fun. You know what I mean? It became more than just working out all the time.
Well, and the other thing is, so live by the sword, die by the sword. What happens when you face the dude who can knock you out in 60 seconds? And as a fighter, I don't want you to look and say to me, so that's going to happen, because really, we want you to have the confidence that's not going to happen. We don't want anybody going into the octagon. We don't want to watch anybody go into the ring going, I'm going to lose.
Right.
Like that sucks, too.
Right. I don't want to see the press conference where a guy's like, I'm going to get fucking annihilated.
Yeah, like, that's just shit. Nobody wants to fucking see that.
Right.
But under the same token, it's the respect to the game. Characters can go too far. I thought Brock in his conversations with Cain Velasquez, or his interviews with Cain, when he lost the title to Cain, I thought, fuck, man, like, you've gone too far. You're a racist prick. I cannot fucking stand you right now. But he was big enough to go too far,
Right. Yeah.
I feel like Matt Riddle never got to that stage where he was big enough to go as far as he fucking went. And sometimes you just got to learn to stay in your lane as a character. Conor McGregor's exceptional at this. He does stay in his lane, and he still is the character all the fucking time. All the fucking time, he's that character. But he also stays in his lane. And then think about guys like Chilenko, the Russian heavyweight, a while back, who had no character at all. And it was like, well, fuck, nobody's going to want to watch a heavyweight match, And
right.
That was it. I don't know if I can watch this. You're fucking boring,
Well, that's just it too, right? I mean, I feel with Riddle, it's a lot of fake it till you make it kind of attitude.
Yeah, I feel like he's trying to be a character that he maybe not even really be. And if he is, then he hasn't taken it to 11. He's taken it to 75. Like,
yeah.
A scale of 1 to 10. Like, he's not just being himself times 10. He's being himself times 150. You're just like, what the fuck, man? Don't do that.
I hate to shit on poor Goldberg, and I don't mean to. It may come across that way. It's not what I'm doing. But I could understand doing that with Goldberg, calling him out and whatever, trying to start something, because I could see that confidence. The guy's a little bit rusty. He's getting up there. He was never like the best pro wrestler on the planet in the first place. So I could take that as confidence. But when you start calling out Lesnar, I take that as stupidity. You know what I mean? Because you come from the same background that Lesnar does, only he's better and he's bigger. So he could take that to a UFC type of fucking fight in a WWE ring. If he wanted to shoot on your ass, what are you going to do about it?
Exactly. Yeah. And again, I'm not saying that there isn't a lower weight class who couldn't beat an upper weight class. I'm saying the punches matter. And when you've got 265 pounds behind the same velocity of a punch as 185 pounds, that fucking matters.
Yes.
80 more pounds is a lot, and it's the same velocity. So,
right, and putting your weight behind your punches, man. That it's funny. Someone touched on that too, where it's like when you're in the like middle weight, that 10 extra pounds or whatever is not a huge percentage difference, but when you're in the super fucking heavyweight, that's a huge difference. You know what I mean? Real quick.
Yeah, because you can have a 40-pound difference in heavyweight.
Yeah, easily.
Like getting it little. It would be easier for the light guy to lose weight and go down to light heavyweight.
Right. And I fucking, here's where I'm stuck, because I think in MMA, the middleweight and the lightweight are far more, currently, even in UFC, far more competitive at the moment. And heavyweight, I feel, is lacking the variety or the number of people that are really in that weight class. And once you get into, I love that Joe Rogan is really pushing for a super heavyweight for cats like myself that are 265 and up. There's nothing going on for us. So, yeah, where there's so many people in the middle and light heavyweight shit that it's such a competitive division. It's amazing.
Absolutely.
So earlier we were talking about Ronda Rousey, and I was making predictions for Elimination Chamber, and I'm going to put another prediction that Ronda Rousey will not appear at Elimination Chamber.
I thought you were going to go the other way on that. I was intrigued.
But mostly because right now she's live streaming that she's playing Horizon Zero Dawn video game on Facebook.
I saw that. Yeah.
So I'm cheating a little bit on that prediction, but.
Way to go out on an edge there, fella.
Hey, what if she shows up in the chamber busting someone in the back of the head with a PS4? You don't know.
Yeah,
maybe
she's
could happen.
Under the ring right now playing that game.
If she is, it's the nicest fucking under ring I've ever seen. It's got a couch. It's like a bear skin on the wall, and
you keep hearing body slam sounds fucking above her. You know where she's at.
Keep it down up there. I'm playing.
What about
she's
Mania?
not under the ring. We don't see Hornswoggle down there.
Oh, that's true.
But speaking of Elimination Chamber, it's probably, I think they're in the pre-show right now, so.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
We just did a Rogan Linked podcast.
We sure did.
I've been known to go over my usual hour, so, I mean, I'm not worried about it.
Excellent.
All right, man. Yeah, let's wrap this bitch up. Hey, man, it was a lot of fun having you.
Tons of fun. We'll have to do it again sometime. Maybe before Mania.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
This has been a lot of fun. Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you guys, man. This is awesome.
Awesome. Thanks for having us on the network. Thanks for having us on your show.
Hey, anytime, man.
Awesome. You have a great night. Enjoy the Elimination Chamber.
Yeah, man. You too.
Talk to you later.
All right, y'all, I'm getting the go-home cue, so let's wrap this bitch up. Thanks for listening. That concludes my sit-down interview with Raw and Order. Check them out on the Tattness Co network, tattnessco.com, and they're on plenty of platforms, but you can find them right through tattnessco.com. Thanks again for checking it out, man, and I'll catch your asses later.
I will not speak to your smallness, a destruction of the fear in us. I have yet to know what